I'm going to recognize myself for 5 minutes. As we heard in Ms. Harmon's testimony, my home of Orange County, California, is a national leader in the fight against drug-impaired driving. The alarming statistic that more Americans are killed in crashes in which drugs are detected compared to those which alcohol was found are reflected in the fact that Orange County saw a 40% increase in drug-impaired driving submissions to the crime lab from 2015 to 2016. In response, the OC Crime Lab and DA have developed a multi-agency drug-impaired driving initiative focusing on investigation, prosecution, and toxicology examination. The OC model serves as the foundation for California's statewide drug-impaired driving model, and the district attorney coordinates training for all of Southern California. These local and state initiatives must be in collaboration with federal efforts, and I am assured knowing that former Orange County resident Deputy Administrator Heidi King is executing NHTSA's drug driving initiative. Last Congress, we enacted the FAST Act, which included language I championed that required NHTSA to study marijuana-impaired driving and how it affects individuals while driving. And I would like to submit the report for the record. The state also authorized NHTSA to work toward a roadside test for impairment. Ms. Harmon, you mentioned the OC Crime Lab studies roadside saliva testing and other field test options. Can you further describe the challenges in developing an effective field test and the progress made toward that goal?
So we've done a couple of studies. We've published in 2016 and 2018 of this year where we looked at, we went back and looked at marijuana, drivers with marijuana, active THC in their system, and looked at the current field work that's being done by law enforcement, the standardized field sobriety tests and the drug recognition expert program. And our studies concluded that although you can't correlate a level to a level of impairment, the current tools that law enforcement is using are very effective of finding THC impaired drivers. The additional work that we've done, we did a pilot study with the Fullerton Police Department looking at roadside saliva testing and the effectiveness of that testing versus our blood collection model that we have had in our county. We have contract phlebotomy for over 30 years, which allows us to reduce the time frame in which the blood is actually collected and how it's submitted to the laboratory and tested. And what we found is that the roadside saliva model testing is effective for illicit drugs, methamphetamine, heroin. It was okay for marijuana, and it was not effective for prescription drugs. In Orange County, we have our third most prevalent drug, with the exception of including alcohol, is benzodiazepine, which is Xanax, which this would exclude many of those cases if we went to a roadside saliva model. So we continue to advocate that if we can get effective blood collection, that it is a matrix that we can work with and that we already have literature that supports what levels are therapeutic, what levels are toxic, and what levels are fatal, which we can provide during testimony in drug-impaired driving cases.
What can Congress do to help develop an effective field test?
I think what's really needed is that we have effective tests. And so what we really need from Congress is support in doing that. The standardized field sobriety test model that law enforcement is using is not mandated in academies, in police academies. The California Highway Patrol mandates that this class, it's 40 hours of training for every one of their officers. They also mandate the 16-hour A-ride, which Ms. Sheehy Church had mentioned before. They also mandate that 16-hour class as well. And again, these are classes that are not mandated of all folks who are in law enforcement now. The additional thing is that the testing component needs to be available. The toxicology labs need to have the resources, much like what the federal level has done for DNA. They need to do that for toxicology. And it will enhance any type of casework that involves drugs if those models are used, and ensuring that the laboratories actually have the resources they need to test all drivers and to test decedent drivers for the drugs that may be in their system.
Okay. And you said, according to the DA, marijuana and prescription drugs account for the majority of drug-impaired driving cases in Orange County. And you mentioned the crime lab will soon begin testing for over 300 drugs in every traffic safety-related case. Can you explain what factors led the crime lab to expand the types of drugs tested?
We expanded the testing because this is what we're seeing. We did a proof of concept research project a couple of years ago and saw that over 30% of drugs were being missed in our cases. So we have led efforts over the last several years to become more comprehensive in the testing that we do, because many of our cases are, as already reflected by this panel, polypharmacy cases. As I mentioned, over 40% of our non-alcohol DUIs have 3 or more drugs in their system. We want to be able to give a comprehensive picture on the data that's being provided.
Okay, thank you, and I'm out of time.